started here.
All right, thank you everybody for having us today. We're glad to talk to you further about what you can do as consultants using AI. And so, as we lead into the next slide, the three of us. There is Sarah, who was unable to be with us today, but myself, Catherine Fredrickson, and then Keith. We like to have fun with these profile pictures. So every time we do these presentations, we'd like to jazz them up a little bit with some fun little pictures here. If you have any questions, you can reach us at edtech@kentisd.org. And if you notice at the top of each of these slides, there is a link that will bring you to this slide deck. So I am ed.tech/AI/ELA. All right, here is a link to our website. This houses a lot of our resources that we've been working on. We've been asked about slide decks, about certain privacy and safety checks, all those good things that we've been working on. And this is a resource, a website where you can navigate and find what you're looking for. There's also some microlearning that we're working on right now. It's a little under construction, but soon enough we'll be able to have those ready. All right, we're going to start with a little pulse check here. So there's a link that says click here. We're going to rate ourselves on how we feel about AI. So on the bottom axis, you'll see it'll go from more scared all the way to more excited. And then the other axis, it's no experience to lots of experience. So you're going to plot your point, your little dot on that graph, and then we'll go to it and we'll see where we fall on that grid. Few more seconds. So what we're seeing here, this is a common trend when we do these trainings where we see these plots fall. Normally it's in the middle. You know, we're kind of excited, but we have some uncertainties. And so as we get through this presentation and even towards the end of the presentation, we hope that you move from more scared to more excited and kind of tend to move those plots over towards the right there. Thank you for sharing.
All right. Before we dive into things today, we like to make sure that we hit on a few dispositions that we hold and we hope that you will hold throughout our time with you. The first we call courage-based framing. That's the idea that AI can do some pretty impressive things, right? Some things that can feel scary, but our promise to you is we're not going to draw upon any fear to get you to pay attention and to motivate you to learn. The second one is tools follow purpose. So when you see the agenda in a second here, we talk a lot about the foundational pieces before we get into the actual tool use, and you'll see why in a minute here. The third is perspective bending. So we'll have a few opportunities for you to drop some things in the chat. I know it gets a little weird when we're online, but make sure that you're sharing your perspectives and also considering the perspectives of others. And then the last one is learning is experiential. So as much as we can, we're going to try to get you hands-on with some of these tools today. Our team has kind of broken up the way that AI knowledge and skills kind of fall into these four pillars. And this is what will mirror our agenda today. So we'll take a look at things in AI literacy to kind of understand how AI works, AI ethics to think about the good and the bad and the things we need to work with students on and our own learners. And then AI fluency, how we get the things out of AI, what we want. And AI development gets into a little bit more of how we create AI. So you will see some of that today too. So here's what our agenda looks like. Like Mark said, we did a workshop with our consultants at Kent ISD. And what you see here is that agenda, and we had to kind of do the greatest hits to squeeze it into an hour and a half. So we won't hit everything, but the things you see that are in gray are hidden slides within this presentation that you are welcome to look at another time or use or share. And I should say at this point, we make everything we want to be able to give to you to use. So please feel free to use these materials if you find them helpful with anybody that you're working with.
All right, we're going to do a little activity about how you feel about AI in your life. And at the bottom of your screen, you should have a little icon that says react. So if you are positive, you have a thumbs up feeling about any of these, feel free to click on that and send those little thumbs flying up in the air. So the first question is, if GPS went down right now, could you confidently get across an unfamiliar city with zero digital help?
So thumbs up if you feel like you could. All right.
Great. Oh, okay.
I know I couldn't.
Me either. Even with GPS, sometimes I get lost.
Oh, sorry. Clicking.
If your streaming apps deleted all recommendations, could you find something new to enjoy in under 5 minutes without frustration? Good. Okay.
Good.
If social media showed only random unfiltered posts, no algorithm at all, would you still scroll for more than 5 minutes? Okay. If autocorrect and predictive text vanished today, would it slow you down or frustrate you enough to notice by lunchtime? If CAPTCHA, spam filters, and fraud detection all stopped working today, would you feel secure entering your personal info online this week?
See a lot of thumbs down on that one.
I like the wide eyes. So, as you know, AI is powering many of the tools we use frequently. They're already baked into a lot of the things that we use daily. And some of us just don't realize it, but we depend on them a lot too.
So we like to make that point before we show this statistic, right? That 93% of students are using AI for schoolwork at this point, based on a survey from Microsoft that happened over in June, and 87% of K-12 teachers use it at work. It's Catherine. I'm sorry, I stepped on your slide. I'm gonna turn it back
All
to you.
right, no worries. All right, so I just want you to take a look at this list. I'm not going to read these all to you, but just take a minute to go down and look at all these different line items here. And I want you to think about what stands out the most to you. And you can either unmute or put it in the chat. What stands out to you? Anything surprising?
When I look at that, it's all about kids trying to get better, not necessarily cheat, which everybody thinks that they're doing with AI. These are all like legit reasons that I would use AI for, and that I do use AI for.
Right. Yeah, if you look at to do the assignments for me, it's kind of on the bottom, right? It is 22%, but it's not ranked one of the higher percentages of why students are using AI. Brainstorming, helping, summarizing information. Yeah, more as a tool. Study guide. Here is how teachers are using AI in school. So same thing, just take a gander and see what stands out to you on that one. Brainstorming, yep. We're using it as a tool too. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. We're doing a lot of brainstorming, updating lesson plans, simplifying complex topics. A lot of similarities to what students are using as well. So there was a report that said over the past 3 years in the job market, the average job has seen 32% of its skill change due to AI, green skills such as environmental issues, and cybersecurity. 32% of its skills changed. That's a little eye opener, kind of a little wild in my mind. And that was almost a year ago. And half of job postings requiring AI skills are outside of the tech sector. So 51%, whether it's a caregiver, anything like HR, like something that doesn't require, like anything that's non-tech, 51%, whereas 49% of those tech sector jobs are requiring those AI skills. And this was just last summer.
And we'd like to bring this up too. This is an idea that we've kind of been brainstorming based off of the model for managing complex change. And it's kind of this idea where when we look at the things that teachers need in order to be successful in the classroom, and we add AI to that, then that's where we get those teacher efficiencies and the enhanced teaching and learning that we hope AI and all technology will really help us with, as well as empowering our learners. But when one of those pieces is missing, like you see here towards the bottom, it kind of presents a challenge, right? So if we had quality instruction, good content knowledge, teaching experience, but we were missing classroom management, we might not see the actual benefit of those AI skills. Essentially, what this is showing is that if we don't have good practices in place, and then we add AI skills to it, it makes bad practices more bad, if you will, right? But if you've got good practices in place and you add AI skills to it, then typically we get all those bonuses.
So all educators need AI literacy. The first thing we talk about is access. Now, AI systems are quite expensive, so this does affect economically disadvantaged populations. And those teachers, when it comes to their experience, those that embrace AI in their classrooms, provide that for their students, right? And so those students, in turn, thrive, and their experiences with AI helps them in the job world and future, schooling and such. So just take a minute in the chat. Why do you think it's important that all teachers develop AI skills? It's not going away. It is a changing world. Yep. Be more effective and efficient. We do hit on that a lot. Also that empowerment as well. It is in the workforce and it's not going away, that's for sure. So these are all great. Thank you for sharing all these. Improve effectiveness. 21st century learners.
That empowered teachers empower learners.
I love that. All right, thank you for sharing.
Okay, so we're going to move forward, and I know you've had a little taste of this from some of the prior presentations that you've had. Mark was kind enough to share those with us, and we did some notebook LMing to make sure that we didn't dig into topics that you've already seen multiple times. If we do touch on them, we'll try to deepen the knowledge there. So we'll try to keep it quick here, but types of AI is a good place to start, and kind of looking at it through the lens of a historical view. AI has really been around since like the 1950s, kind of when computers, as we know them today, started to kind of show up. We were already talking about using technology to mimic things that humans could do. So early systems were called expert systems. Things like ELIZA and Mycin were essentially just giant databases that could be searched by doctors or therapists to kind of get some diagnoses and some recommended treatments. From there, it sort of evolved in the 1990s. We kind of had this milestone where I'm curious if you heard of Deep Blue, but Deep Blue is a IBM AI that was being developed in the 90s. And in 1996, it beat the world chess champion. And it kind of caused a stir. And it was sort of this moment with AI where all of us humans were like, okay, like these machines can kind of do some of the things we're doing, maybe even better. So that's a type of reactive thing, right? Deep Blue was just reacting to the moves that its opponent had, right? Just like a Roomba reacts to the things that are in an environment, it sees something, it senses something, and it adjusts, right? It's just reacting. The next more complicated thing that showed up more in the 2000s, I got that in the wrong spot, is predictive AI. And that's where we take huge amounts of data. For a while there, big data was a big word around this. Taking all that data, analyzing it to predict what the future may hold, to predict outcomes. Netflix and Spotify were both really big pioneers in this, looking at the things you're watching and listening to predict other things you might like. Okay. So all that was before generative AI, before November of 2022, 3 years ago, right? Just over. And now we have this generative AI thing, which generates new content and chats with us in natural language. So it was a huge leap because it can create things and feel natural to work with. The next thing that you may be hearing in the news is around agentic AI. It's being developed. There are some elements of it here. But what we like to say is this is kind of the idea of having a vacation agent, right? So I could say, hey, I need to go on vacation. Agent, help me schedule that. Now, let me do that and do all that for me without my intervening. So it has some autonomy and it has access to things like your bank account, things like your calendar, places on the web that you might need to, so that it can go and say, oh, you've got a free week right here. I'm going to schedule you for that. Where am I going to put you? Well, you look like you like these things. I'm going to put you in Jamaica. Okay. And then I'm going to pay for that hotel and I'm going to pay for that flight for you so that all you have to do is show up. Right. That's the idea of agentic AI. Now, there's obviously some data privacy concerns with that, which I think we're trying to navigate as a society before that will really take hold. So that's kind of where we're headed. And then lastly, general or AGI is predicted to come in 2030 or 2040, kind of in that space. And that's where computers kind of catch up to where we are as humans. And I know we joke about Terminator and Ultron, but I don't think it's going to be as scary as that. So we'll just have some very smart technology out there. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. And when we don't understand how AI works, it kind of feels like a black box. It feels like magic, right? So we're going to kind of break it down. And I know you've seen some of these terms before, but we're going to try to put it into context with how these things all fit together. So this is kind of our diagram that we have worked with. And we'll take you through the different pieces here. The first is data. Data is everything with AI. The larger the data set that an AI tool is trained on and the more diverse it is, the better that the tool will work overall. So there's a huge incentive for companies to go out and grab data in the form of text and images and audio and code and video, like all kinds of media that you could think of, and gather that and pull it into their systems and start training their AI models on it. Okay. Now I'm going to get you into an activity. Actually, Catherine's going to get you into an activity that's going to help you understand how they parse that data.
So this is an activity that's called Don't Get Bit. And as you can see on one side of the screen, we have biters. And then on the right side, we have non-biters. So I want you to think about how you could make a rule that would identify biting monkeys. And you can throw that in the chat if you'd like, or unmute. We're trying to find the rule. What are the biting monkeys? Okay. Mouth open, not dead, or X'd eyes. If they show their teeth and have at least one eye open, they bite. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So what is the rule? Mouth is open and eyes are not X's. So you're on the right track there. All right, so we're going to look at a couple monkeys. I would like for you to tell me which one bites. $13. Okay, good. How about the next
Why?
slide? Oh yeah, first, yes. Why does it bite? Because the eyes and mouth are open. The eyes are not X's. Okay,
Good.
good. How about the next one? Okay, 4. And why is that? The mouth is open. Yep, good. All right, how about this one? Neither. Okay, 36. Okay. Well, first of all, that 36 has a bow and 32 has glasses. So how would that affect our rule? Do we know what those mean? No, we really don't, right? So we can't really make the assumption of which ones are biters and non-biters when we have extra add-ons to our images.
A good illustration of why training
Mhm.
data needs to be diverse, right? Because we didn't know anything when we made the rule. We didn't know anything about glasses or bows, right? So that's the gist of what you just did there was actually something called machine learning, right? You identify patterns in a set of data, in this case, pictures of monkeys, right? And then you use those patterns to make a rule and predict what other things might happen, okay? In the case of AI, we're talking about rules upon rules upon rules upon rules, many layers of algorithms, as we call it in AI, that essentially work together in a thing called deep learning that builds a neural network. And a neural network is taking all those patterns and making connections between them all, and it mimics our neurons in our brain. So they call it a neural network. Okay? This is essentially the model. If you hear the word AI model, that's what they're talking about. Okay, then we come along, right, and we interact with usually a chatbot, but it can be other types of AI that goes back and references that neural network to think about what we're saying, to process that, to build something new and give us an original artifact. And the other thing with generative AI is that the human input, the things that you put in to AI, goes back and retrains that data set. So that data set gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more diverse over time. This is why it's important not to put student information into AI tools, because that human input, the things that you're putting into it, can go back and retrain that data system or data set. And now that's public knowledge and information. So that is kind of the quick rundown of how all these pieces fit together. And we're going to jump into a little bit about what we need to be concerned about with AI. And again, I know you've seen some of this before, so we're going to move kind of quick and just deepen the knowledge a little bit.
So you often hear about bias in AI, and there's a lot of stereotypes. There's different types of biases too. So like selection bias, that's when the training data isn't representative of the real population. Then we move into the confirmation bias, which is about teams developing the systems, and there isn't a lot of diversity on those teams, and there's a lack of representation. And they often form these blind spots and where these gaps are trying to be filled, right? And then our stereotype bias, it's how we interact with it and reinforce patterns. So it's really important that we are critical when those outputs come out and check that output, right? Either give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, tell it that it's wrong, and make sure that that you're doing that because it does cause harm and discrimination towards certain populations. The next slide also talks about fabrications, often also called hallucinations. And we're very necessary in rating those responses and correcting when it's wrong. And a lot of this information comes to us as misinformation, and that is false information. It's not deliberate, it's just they're uninformed. They're just getting the facts wrong. Disinformation, however, is deliberate, and that's when they're trying to mislead you. And so yes, when those outputs come out, just making sure that you rate those responses. On the right side, you'll see images. I forgot to mention the last slide. It's just referring to anything that's created, looking at those images and saying, does anything look unrealistic or fabricated? What looks wrong? How can I fix this? And just making sure that you are using your critical thinking skills and making those changes.
Okay, our next one is along the data end of things, and that's data stewardship. That's just being a good steward of the data that we're putting into AI, making sure we're not using personally identifiable information. And I know that every one of you checks the terms of service and the privacy policies before you open a new tool, right? So we know that that's generally not realistic. Even if you do open it, it would take you an hour or more to kind of process all that information that's in there, right? So we've saved you some time. Sarah Wood, our third compatriot here, has actually built a tool called the AI Privacy and Data Checks. It's actually linked on the next slide, which is hidden. But what it is essentially a database of all the different AI tools that are out there. She put them through a 150-point check on their terms of service and privacy policies to tell you which tools are safe for different levels of students to be able to use, and which ones are safe for you to use as a teacher. And one that I just don't want to skip past too quickly is Gemini, which we'll spend a little bit of time on at the end of the day or end of our time together. It's done some good things, and we'll kind of get into that more when we get to Gemini. But they are very helpful with that data privacy piece. And here's that spreadsheet. If you want to go and check it out, please use it. It's there for you. Okay, another thing we also get asked about is environmental impact. And right now we're still trying to figure out the depth of all this, but there has been one report that was released by Google. So take that with a grain of salt because they create Gemini, right? But essentially they have said that an average Gemini prompt uses about 0.24 watt hours of energy. That's about charging your phone for about 1 minute. It also generates 0.03 grams of CO2, which is about the same as sending 3 emails. And it uses 0.26 milliliters of water, which is 1/50th of a teaspoon, or just like a portion of a drop, if you would. Okay. So when you look at that, you might think like, well, it's not really that much, but the last stat on there is approximately 2,500 prompts are generated every second inside of Gemini. It adds up quickly, right? It's the scale that's the issue, not necessarily the use of it. So that's what we know about the environment at this point. All right, we're going to move into AI ethics now and talk a little bit about some opportunities and risks. So if you take a look at this picture, this is a tool, a device called an alter ego. It's still in development. This is sort of like a prototype. But what you're looking at, the thing that's kind of around his ear is a bone conducting speaker. Okay, so it can talk to him through his, essentially it vibrates the eardrum. And you can, essentially he can hear it, but nobody else can. Okay, so it's a bone conducting speaker there. The thing that goes across his lip and under his chin is actually looking at brain waves, brain signals that you would send to your lips to form words. Okay, so he doesn't need to speak, but he needs to think about the words he wants to say, and the device is sensitive enough to pick up on those words. This is kind of the moment where people go, holy crap, right? So essentially all of that then is sent to a device so it can work with an AI tool, and essentially you can have a conversation with your AI without speaking, without the things that it's saying going out to anybody else around you, right? Kind of an insane technology. It's really wild to think about the applications that this could have, right? Obviously, there's some huge positives to this, especially for people with like ALS or different disabilities that can't speak. They've lost their opportunity. Now they might have that opportunity to gain that back. So I always, whenever I see technologies like this, I take a step back and I think, okay, ChatGPT, it was 3 years ago at this point. We're only at the beginning of what AI is going to be able to do. And someday we're going to look back at that and say, yeah, that was a cool idea, but really we're doing so much cooler things now with AI. So we will soon think that things like that are primitive ideas. And another piece of this is when we look at the technologies, it's not necessarily AI that is a good or bad thing. It's the way that humans use AI, right? The potential for harm and good lies within the humans that use it. It's not the AI that's the harm here. So our job is to kind of help those humans, whether that's our teachers, our students, or anyone else that we work with, trying to help them to use AI effectively and responsibly and as a tool for good. And that's why we're going to get into ethics here. So there's 4 ways that you can essentially help students or any kind of learner, any human really, develop their ethics. And in the teaching role, it sort of looks like this. The first is explicit teaching, and that's just being clear with students about what's right and what's wrong. Okay? Social interaction is giving students a chance to discuss and hear other viewpoints. So thinking about that perspective bending that we mentioned earlier, sharing your perspective, but also being open to others. The third is personal experience. So giving them hands-on experience with AI in a meaningful way in learning. And the fourth is observation. So that's them observing you, modeling it, and disclosing how you're using AI in appropriate ways. So we're going to give you some examples of what we mean by these things so that you can actually take these concrete examples back to whoever you're working with.
So when we're looking at the explicit teaching, we need to teach students how to use AI appropriately. So often on top of assignments, there can be like a disclaimer in a paragraph form that's boxed or highlighted. How can you use AI? Well, you can use it to gather feedback on your rough draft, maybe to refine or reword sentences you've already written, or to conduct initial research to support and refute claims. And as you remember in the beginning of our slideshow, how students were using it, those are some of the ways they were actually already using it. So some ways you cannot use AI to generate an outline for your essay, to create a draft, or to formulate your arguments. So these are just the parameters that you can just put at the top of your assignment so they know what the guards are. And if you're unsure, ask me, discuss it with me first. Let's have that conversation. And also, if you do use it, make sure you disclose it and cite it, whether it's MLA style or whatever style that teacher is using for their class. This table is taken from, we're doing some work with Kentwood Public Schools, and this comes from their guide. And here they have different color-coded levels. And so if it's prohibited, obviously there's no disclosure required, but level 1, you can use it for brainstorming. But if you notice on the right side where there is a disclosure, there is a requirement that you need to disclose that you're using it, whatever level 1 through 4. For 2, you can clarify, improve, or reword your student-created work. And then 3, you can use complete specific elements of the task directed by the teacher. And then 4, you can use it throughout the assignment as a co-pilot.
And this is like a district-wide blanket that all teachers can use as a tool on any assignment that they're working with.
So we are going to discuss some AI ethical issues. Now, often we have debates. We have various different scenarios, but we're going to talk about using a medical scribe in the social interaction area. So doctors are using these AI systems that capture clinical documentation while you talk to them. So I want you to think about this, and we're going to do a waterfall. So I want you to think about your response, and you can type it in the chat, but don't hit enter yet. We're all going to do it at the same time. All right. So I want you to think about, why is AI needed? Is there anybody that could be helped by this change or harmed by this change? Okay. So we're going to put that in the chat, but don't hit enter until we say go. we'll have a little waterfall effect. Few more seconds just to gather your thoughts and get those typed in before we share.
I should say too, it's usually easy for people to come up with either pros or cons. But I'm really going to push you try to find both pros and cons here.
All right, Keith, are we ready?
I think so.
All right, hit that enter button. Woo. Okay, yeah. Privacy can be compromised. That comes up a lot when we do this activity.
I see a lot speaking to the efficiency of the process
Yeah.
and that allowing the doctor to be more human with the client, right? Freeing up that computer, that device between them and you when you're in the office allows more natural and meaningful conversation.
Possibly to see more patients too, speeding up the service.
Yeah, it might identify patterns between patients that we wouldn't necessarily see. Yeah.
Might help the doctor to document more.
Mhm. One I always find interesting, you mentioned the data being compromised. Um, this is not necessarily the data being compromised, but it's data being used in a way that could be harmful, right? If insurance companies were tuned into this, right? How would that change coverage for care if they're able to tap into that and know more about you than your doctor might? All right, are we ready to move forward here, Catherine?
I think so. Yeah, thanks for sharing, everybody. So here are some examples of some other debates. The AI therapy we talked about, the medical scribe we talked about, but also the AI therapy, the chatbots, trained to interact, and the algorithms that we have in social media. These are just three of many different debates that we like to engage teachers and staff and trainings. But on the next slide, we do have the resource where we house all of those. So if you're interested in looking at those, there's the link at the top. And there's other things that have like voice cloning and facial recognition and tons of other ones that you can look at for harms and benefits for the AI use.
A really good way to engage people in conversations about AI and recognizing the good and the bad together. Good. All right. The next piece of helping our humans develop ethics is around natural integration. And this is the way that teachers would put AI in the hands of students to assist in the learning process, right? And I'm stealing a little bit from NCSM. They are the math group that put out a report and some guidance around AI in the realm of math. And I know we're talking to ELA here, but some of the recommendations in there, I think, carry over for any kind of content. So when we're putting AI in the hands of students, the most important thing is that it's going to help us with our pedagogical goals and our learning targets, right? It's going to enhance or amplify the things that we want, the outcomes we want from those lessons. So maybe that's things like critical thinking or creativity, enhancing productive struggle, discourse, agency, right? All these things that we want to see in lessons, but sometimes are pushed aside because they're hard. They take more time to do. But this is an opportunity where AI can actually amplify those pieces instead of replacing those pieces. I mentioned earlier the idea of when we add AI into bad teaching practices, we get worse teaching practices. This is that setting where we want to really think about the practices we're using and look for ways that it will amplify those teaching practices, the good things from it. So we've developed a few things, and again, there's a bunch of hidden slides in this space, but what you see here is a little template that you can use to help guide the use of AI inside of a lesson. So if you're working with teachers, you're doing some coaching, or maybe you're coaching coaches, thinking through the intention behind using that AI with your learners, whoever that may be. Catherine, I think I've got the next couple slides, but I see the debate doc needs to be opened up.
Oh,
Would you mind going and doing that real quick?
where did
And if you don't get to it, I'll get to it when we switch over to you. So, all right, the last piece of the developing ethics is around observation. That's the modeling, right? And disclosing how you're using it. Just being a good model for students is probably the best way to really show them the positives that AI can do. So what you see here is a number of different suggestions we have. Again, if we had more time, we would dig into these further, but we have built like a one-pager that's linked down here at the bottom that you can have hang up next to your devices, or use it as a poster in a classroom, whatever you're doing. Some good tips for teachers on how to model good use of AI, using that as a tool for good. All right. And then we're
All
heading
right, we are
into
moving. So that document should be all set to go if you want to get to that one. All right, so the next thing we're going to be looking at is prompt engineering, and we're going to start with this GPT generated image. And if you were to guess the prompt, what would this one be? Kangaroo at the beach, okay. Image of a kangaroo. Kangaroo on a Pacific Island beach. All right, yeah, so it is an image of a kangaroo on a beach. So if we can look at the next image, you'll notice the difference in this one because we added more flair to it, right? We have a lot more describing words, a lot more input for our image. So it just shows you the more that you add, the more that you add that little flair to it, it's going to, the output will be better, right? And this isn't just with images, this is also with any type of work that you do. But this is just a nice visual that you can see what happens when you add that extra input or flair. So we often like to use the prepare framework when we prepare our prompts. And each one of these has an explicit role. So like for P, the prompt, you're going to introduce the task. And on the next slide, we'll get into this a little bit deeper. But for role, you're going to give the AI a role or focus. You're going to be explicit and provide instructions and resources. And then you're going to set the parameters. So setting the structure for the response. The last three, you're going to ask the AI to follow up questions. Maybe you've got you have some parameters or different questions that you wanted to ask just to make sure that you're on the right track there. And then actually after that, you're going to rate it. So say, for example, if you ask AI to rate its response and you say, okay, that was only a 7 or an 8 out of 10, I would actually like a 10 out of 10 response, then generate it. You should hopefully see some improvements. I often think, then why don't you just give me a 10 out of 10 initially? I don't know. And then emotions, setting the tone of the response. So whether you want a friendly tone or professional tone, that's more or less what it would sound like as you read it. And so here is the example of what this would look like. So introducing the task. So this is, you're going to create a choice board that will allow students to deepen their understanding about U.S. involvement in World War II. The role, you are a 9th grade U.S. history teacher. And we often like to incorporate what you're an expert at. So if you're an expert at incorporating engagement techniques. And then being explicit, you want the choice board to, if you attach a lesson plan or a link, you can import certain documents to refine that. And then you want at least one high school C3 social studies skill from page 86 of whatever document that is. And then those parameters, you want 9 different choices for the students, and they focus on different learning styles. And then also this would include a script for the teacher, and each option should have an exemplar. So it's pretty explicit on what you're asking there. And then the follow-up questions, ask me anything that you're uncertain about before you begin to build your response, and then rate that response on how well it meets the criteria. And then any suggestions that, any areas that may be improved. And then with the last part, with the emotions, it should be engaging and student-friendly for the 9th grade student. So the last three pretty much they can stay the same, with the exception of with that student-friendly 9th grade student voice, you could change that to cater to whatever grade level you are, is your audience. So here we do have a template for you to try out. We won't be doing this today, but this is available for you to try. If you click on the link, it will bring you to a template, and you'll just click use template. And there we go. And as you can see, the bottom is already filled out, but you would put whatever grade you would want in there, but you would build your prompt in the top 4 boxes. When you're done building that prompt, you would copy and paste just the gray areas on the right side and put that into Gemini or whatever LLM. We like to suggest Gemini, and then find out what that output looks like. And then you can actually paste that output into the bottom of this template here. Okay. It might be large if you're looking for a lesson plan. It might be a little lengthy, but that's where that would go if you want to practice your prompts. So this is where, when those prompts come out, we like to focus on our 10-70-20 rule. And when you're putting in that prompt, that's our 10% human spark, right? And then as we hit that enter button, that Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever we're using, it's generating that content for us. And then that output that comes out, you're going to use your human judgment or critical thinking skills to tweak anything that seems wrong. Like maybe there's some bias that was baked in there. Maybe it's not accurate. So you're going to use your own critical thinking skills to make those adjustments. And that's where we call this, in addition to the framework, we have edit, using our human judgment, evaluating the strength of the response, determining how accurate it is, identifying those biases or misconceptions, and then transforming or updating any of the content that comes out. And so on that template, you'll notice that in the bottom of it, there is a spot if you want to tweak any of that output that came out, refining anything, and then reprompting it. So there's a section on the bottom for that edit part of your prompt. So you know your curriculum better than anybody. So as an expert, you would know what it looks like when it comes out. So using that human judgment and knowledge is very critical when you're using any AI. You're the expert.
Okay, so that was the quick and dirty prompt engineering rundown. We hope that you will use that Prepare framework template for yourself or with any teachers, educators you work with. We find it's really helpful in getting the right kind of response out of AI without having to reprompt and reprompt and reprompt. Be as specific as you can. So, all right. We did mention earlier, Gemini is one that we tend to recommend. And I imagine that the people in our roles in your areas are also probably seeing some of that because over the summer, Gemini made a big commitment to education. Prior to all of that, there really wasn't a good tool necessarily for protecting student data, but being able to use student data with an AI tool. So Gemini essentially got together with a bunch of educators and built guardrails into their tool that make sure that students don't get to places that they're not supposed to get to. So it's kind of a safe place for them to work in. It's grounded in learning science, so we'll show you a little bit of, I always want to call it deep learning, guided learning. And then the nice thing about this, and probably the most important piece, is Gemini for education, when you use it on your school domain, insulates your data. And what that means is the things that you're putting into AI no longer cycle back to that training data. It stays in your system. So you don't have to worry as much about student privacy and information. It's still best practice to redact when you can, okay? But you can actually lighten up that load there. And it's all free of charge. So what I did is I took some time to build some examples from the consultant angle to demonstrate some of the features within Gemini that you may or may not be familiar with. Within Gemini, if you're not using it, we used to say actually we were all gung-ho for ChatGPT, right? We had an exclusive relationship with them. And when Gemini did this, we have sort of moved over there. We still see Gemini or ChatGPT every once in a while, but Gemini has been where our focus has kind of moved to. So what we'll do is take a look at some of these scenarios that we have here for you, and I'll kind of demo them on the screen. If you feel really comfortable with them and you want to expand on these ideas and kind of do your own thing while we're talking, that's great. But I'll talk you through this so that you can see how each of these features work. Okay. So first, I'm just going to go over to Gemini, which is just gemini.google.com. And I'm going to make sure up in the top right corner that I'm logged in as me with my school domain. Okay. Your personal domain doesn't have those same protections for data. Okay. If you look here, this is kind of the standard prompt. Mine's in dark mode, so it might look a little bit different than yours. But essentially on the bottom, we have a space to add files. There's tools, and I'm going to show you some of these. And there's a switch over here to switch between fast and pro. Gemini Pro right now is one of the fastest models that's out there. It's one of the better models that competes with Claude and ChatGPT and Grok, right? So there's lots of, it's a really good system to use. The Pro is essentially going to give you a lot more processing power. It's going to put a lot of thinking behind it. It uses more environmental resources than using the fast option. For most things, you're probably just going to use fast. But if you really need it to do some complex things, Pro is where you want to go. Okay. Now, in here, I would normally type my prompt. So Catherine showed you the prepare model. We could copy that whole prompt that was in there about the US history choice board and put it right here and just hit generate, and it will go and it'll do its thing. I'm going to show you a little bit about the tools that are hiding under here that are built for educational use. Okay. And the first one we're going to get into is deep research. I'm going to flip back to the presentation here. So the example I've got here is we want to go and research all the best coaching strategies that are out there. We want to make sure that we can help our educators. And in this case, I used teaching elementary literacy as the topic. Okay. So I'm going to copy this prompt. You can see it's kind of got that prepare model in it. That's the first bits for the demo. Okay. I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to take out those words. Okay. And it's going to start its thing. So the way that deep research works is it's going to scour the internet, every corner of the internet you could think of, to find the best research for what I asked it for. And I asked it to help me with coaching strategies for educators teaching elementary literacy. Okay. What it produced right here is a plan for its research. Okay. So it's going to go and identify core principles. It's going to research the most current things that are out there, synthesize some evidence, and go deeper. If I was really going to go deeply into this, you can actually go and adjust the report if you want to. But for now, I'm just going to hit start, and we'll see what happens. So research is going to grab everything in the internet that it can find about this particular topic, and it will show you what it's thinking and doing on the right side here. So the research is happening. So it's doing some foundations, finding those core documents, integrating the science of reading, next research steps. These are the websites that it's starting looking at. Okay. some core documents, some more science of reading stuff. Okay, you can see its process for what it's actually researching here. Now, this does take 5 to 10 minutes, maybe longer if you're doing some really deep research. So what I did is I came prepared today with what the actual output will look like. Okay. So when that's done doing its whole thing, it will look something like this. It creates a research report. Okay, so systemic literacy coaching for excellence. Okay. And it's got the foundation for science of reading, for early literacy coaching, looking at deconstructing. Okay. Now, to me, I don't live in the ELA realm, so I don't know. But do these look like things that are things you would consider if you were looking up ways to coach people on early literacy? Seeing a few heads bobbing. Systemic alignment. Yeah. So, as Catherine said earlier, there may be fabrications in here, right? So we have to still use our human judgment to make sure that we're looking through it and making sure it's good, and making sure it's stuff that we can actually trust, right? But it does a really good job of grabbing all the things and giving a really great picture of what's out there. And my favorite part of all this is once it's done doing its thing, up here, oh, not done yet. You can actually take your output and turn it into a infographic, which is not working anymore. There it goes. Okay. So it takes that whole research report and turns it into something that's a little bit more digestible and actually pretty appealing. So you can see some of the concepts that it pulled from doing its deep research around the internet. So all of that to say, it can be a really helpful tool. I like to use it when I'm starting, like trying to linking up to a new topic. Like I actually used it working with a group of special ed educators the other week, because I don't know that realm as deeply as they do. But if I could get some understanding of at least high level things, then I can actually take that and make a more meaningful presentation for them. Okay. So that's deep research. And feel free, by the way, to drop questions in the chat. I'm kind of going through these demos, and Catherine should be able to answer most of them. And stop me, Catherine, if there's any that you don't know the answer to. So, all right, let's look at guided learning. Go back here. And here's the thing that you should know is anytime that you're starting a new idea, you want to start a new chat. Don't just continue in one long chat with Gemini for a long time, because it's going to start having memory of the things that you were talking about before. And you might have things showing up like a purple kangaroo drinking out of a coconut on a beach when you're doing some research on ELA strategies, right? So make sure that you start a new chat. That's just this button over here on the left. So you start with
Before
a
we
blank
move on,
slate.
Keith, there was a
Mhm.
question about the transition going from the deep research straight to the infographic. What did you
Yeah,
click
thank
on?
you.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was kind of letting it do its thing in the background, so I'm glad it's finished. Up here in the top, you see there's a create button. It can do a number of things, but infographic is the one I use the most. But it can generate a whole web page for you. It can do a quiz, it can do flashcards, and you can actually, if you want, describe your own app, and it will start to help you code a new app, which we'll get to in a minute here too. Thanks for stopping me, Catherine. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to guided learning. Okay. In guided learning, if you are familiar with Khan Academy, it's kind of Gemini's version of that. So I need to switch back to my thing here. So we're going to use guided learning to act as a fifth grade student who has a rough draft and wants to get some writing feedback. Okay, some stuff, maybe they want to use AI before they go then to their teacher to get additional feedback about their writing. Okay, so I'm going to copy this prompt again. Oops, do the same thing I did before. Not erase the whole thing. Okay, take out those words. Okay, and I've got guided learning turned on. So I gave it a role of being an expert for narrative writing. They're skilled at teaching students in plain language how to improve their writing. I had them refer to the requirements for narrative writing assignment. So I have like a rubric that I dropped in there, and it's considering those things. So here's what this looks like. And if I did my sound right, you can hear this.
Writing a narrative is a wonderful way to tell a story. Let's work on your rough draft together. I'll ask guiding questions along the way to help you explore your ideas and make your writing stronger while keeping your voice. To start, I need two things: your rough draft, the requirements for your narrative writing assignment. Knowing exactly what your teacher is looking for, like strong characters, a descriptive setting, or a clear sequence of events, will help us focus our review. Once you share those, we can dive right into the story. Which part of your narrative, the characters, the setting, or the main events, are you most excited to share or most interested in making better first?
Okay, so it asked me to upload my example, or my rough draft, if you will, and the rubric that the teacher had. So I generated those with Gemini 2. So they may or may not be real high quality, but that's what I've got. Okay, so I've uploaded those, and I'm going to ask it, let's start with the main event. And by the way, I should have stopped and said, there's a little microphone down in the corner before you hit enter. So you can literally talk to this in natural language and it will talk back to you. Okay, just like we heard it speak out what it's doing. So I'll play this again and I'll stop there because I don't want to spend too much time here. I want to give you a taste of what this looks like.
That is a great idea. Focusing on the main event, when Leo presents his invention and waits for the awards, is a fantastic way to make the story really pop. The rubric calls this narrative techniques in detail. To meet the standard, your writing should use concrete words and sensory details to convey the experience. To exceed the standard, you need to use a wealth of sensory details to bring the story vividly to life. This means we need to focus on what your character, Leo, is experiencing with his 5 senses during that high-tension moment. Let's look at the part where Leo is waiting for the judges to come to his table. The waiting was the worst part. I just kept fiddling with the sign on my pot and drinking orange juice. We can add more detail here. How could you bring that moment more vividly to life using sensory details and character reaction? Sight. What did the professional-looking projects or the fancy judge's blue suit look like up close as he watched them approach? Sound. What specific sounds were happening in the huge gymnasium? Was there a loudspeaker, the clatter of a neighboring project, or just the silence of his own anxious thoughts? Feel. Taste. How did the orange juice taste? Was it cold? How did his nervous hands feel as he fiddled with the sign? Take a look.
Okay, I'm going to pause there. But essentially, you kind of get the gist of it's going to act sort of as a coach, coaching the student through the things that they should consider. It's not necessarily, and I actually put this in the parameters of this, it's not going to just give them the answer and say, you should say this, right? It's going to prompt thinking as much as it possibly can. This is why Gemini worked so closely with educators to build this deep or guided learning piece so that we could use that Socratic method a little bit and not just give students the answers, because then we just replace the thinking overall, right? So that's guided learning. Okay. And again, I've got all of this in the slide deck. There are more things to click on further down. There's this Gemini guidance that has more scenarios that you can play around with if you still want to take this further. But just giving you the quick flyover of all these pieces. This next one is one that our team's been using a lot and I'm really excited for. It's called Canvas inside of Gemini. And it's essentially a vibe coding tool. So if you've heard the term vibe coding, this is what that looks like. I'm going to create a tool called a creative writing prompter that's going to generate some random subjects and random places that students can use as a prompt to start writing. Okay, so I'm going to make a little app, if you will, to help me do that. So that's what it looks like in the end. Let me get a new chat so you can see how this gets built. And we're going to go to Canvas. paste this in. Okay, and we'll hit go. So I added a whole bunch of different parameters kind of describing what this app should look like. And because I put it into Canvas, it's going to start taking my ideas, talking with me about it, and translating that into code. So essentially, what this does is it makes computer science a lot more accessible because you no longer need to have the syntax of how to put together different lines of code in order to create something that's workable for you. Okay. So you can see on the right side, it's already generated an entire app for me. Okay, so I've got a subject, I've got a scene, it's describing it. The other one I have has pictures. And if I want to scramble it, it's just going to make a totally random subject for students to use. I made sure to put like, it's got to be school appropriate. It's got to be able to be read by a 9th grade student, I think I put in there. Right. So a stout badger with mismatched socks on his front paws was diligently trying to fit a gigantic, brightly colored rubber chicken into his small, worn leather satchel. Interesting. And then the scene in the overgrown, silent clearing of the whispering woods, hundreds of colorful mismatched umbrellas hung from the low branches of the ancient oak trees, spinning slowly, even though there was no breeze, while a faint, sweet smell of cinnamon lingered in the cool air. Okay. So it's giving them some prompts to work with. I also did this to try to generate it ahead of time because sometimes when you work with images, it goes a little bit slower. Here's another version of what it created where it just generates images and the students can take that and run with it.
So Keith, do we have time to show them how to share it? I know sometimes that we can run into issues on how to actually share it with students.
Yeah, I am looking at the time and we got to wrap up here soon, but
Okay.
the way that this works is essentially it's generated the code for you. You can hit share and copy the code. Okay. And then if you go over to like a Google site, this is what I usually do. Get there. Okay. And I'm just gonna create a new page with a full embed. We'll call it demo. And you just click that add embed. So it's just using the embed code options inside of Google Suites. And just paste that whole big mess of code that it gave us. And now it's a live thing that our students can get to. Okay. I will say in playing with this last night, it does struggle with some of that AI image generation. I'm curious if it'll work right now. But I will say too, just because it's not working today doesn't mean that they're going to add that feature later because it moves quick. So yeah, gave me an error. But that's essentially how it works. You would publish it into an embed code on a Google site or anywhere else you can do an embed code. Okay, pretty cool. Vibe coding. All right. Just want to check my time here, make sure we get to everything. Oops. There we go. Okay. A couple other quick things. Gems is a tool, and I think you've maybe seen Gems before. I thought I saw that on one of your prior things, but essentially Gems is like a custom GPT, right? It basically pre-trains the Gemini to talk to you in a certain way or ask you specific things and do specific tasks. So our colleague Sarah created a gem for alt text. So essentially, you go in and you upload a picture, and it takes the AI tool and it generates alternate text for you to include on a picture. So you would use a gem in much the same way you would use vibe coding to do things for you repeatedly for a repeated task. Okay, and I'm not going to spend the time to show you because we don't have that much time, but that's what that's there for. And I do want to show you some Notebook LM. Notebook LM is also a Gemini tool. So it works with the same privacy rules and all of that. But the nice thing with Notebook LM, if you haven't seen this, is you essentially give it the training data. Okay, you get to train it on what you want it to refer to. So you could take things like research papers or articles, um, slide decks. I used it for your slide decks, the 3 slide decks about AI that were before me today, to kind of gather some patterns of things that were already talked about, to make sure I didn't dig in too deep on things that were already there. So what I'm going to do is upload a source. Okay, you can do websites, YouTube videos, text, Google Drive, or you can just upload. So I'm going to grab our early literacy essential practices. Okay, so now it's generating a chat GPT essentially where I can talk with it, and it's trained on this document. It's going to give me answers from this document. So I can ask it, like, give me the highlights of this document. And it will generate those types of pieces about the information I've given it. Okay. I can also load lots of documents and have it analyze patterns, find any gaps in things. I can put test data in here if I wanted to, because again, it's a Google thing. It's under our Google license, so your data is protected. So you could ask for it to find patterns in your test data. Okay. All right, I see a question in the chat. Workspace with Gemini. The only thing you need to look for is that you're logged in with your Google account for your school Google account. Okay. So it's not a different link or anything. You just got to make sure you're logged in with the right account. So what I got here looks like it just highlighted each of the 10 essentials in plain language. And some other quick things that might be helpful. I'd use this a lot with articles. This audio overview generates a podcast for you based on the topics that you've got over here. And it's pretty good. I should have preloaded that, thinking about it today. It'll also do video overviews. It now can generate slide decks for you based off of content. The infographic and quiz and flashcards also show up here. Lots and lots of awesome things. This is one of our favorite tools as a team. All right, it's going to probably take too long for me to be able to show you that, but it's pretty awesome. Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, it's pretty impressive what they're able to do with that. It's not like robot voice reading you text. It's actually like people having a conversation about your content. So, okay. That was a very fast rundown of all the Gemini things, but I hope I've given you some ideas to work with. I want to point you to a couple resources, and then we will kind of wrap up with a reflection for you. So let me get back to slideshow. Okay. Our team's been working on a roadmap for educators to kind of identify spaces where they might have gaps in their understanding about AI. And we built this roadmap for that purpose. So this might be a tool that you could use for yourself. This could be something that you could use with groups that you're working with in your county. But it kind of points out different spaces that we need to think of AI. Many of the ones you saw today in today's presentation, you could probably point back to in here and go, oh yeah, that's what they talked about on that slide and that slide. So you can see all the pieces in here. We're currently trying to revise it to update, because even though it's only like 4 months old, it already needs updates because that's how fast AI is moving. So, but it's there for you. Hopefully it's a thing you can use as well. Okay. At this point, we would normally give you some space to dig into tools. And again, this is just me saying, as a consultant, here are some activities that we've built, that we've vetted, that you can go and use with teachers if you want to explore AI with them. We've got an Explorer badge where they can go and look at different tools. There's activities built around it. There's a Gemini badge where you can take kind of the same thing we just did in that demo, but different scenarios for different content areas, different grade levels. There's a Pathfinder badge where they can actually go through that self-assessment and start thinking about spaces they could learn. And an Elevator badge that gets into examples of how teachers are actually integrating this into classrooms from the workshops that we've done. So again, I hope these are all resources that you can use in your role. or expand your own knowledge even. And then the very last thing is I want to leave you with this thought, and this is going to launch you into your debrief and reflection period. So we like to think of AI being used in 3 different ways for education. The first is for efficiency, and that's the idea that we can make the teaching profession more sustainable, more enjoyable, because we're saving teachers time on tasks that eat up their energy, their time, and their focus. So efficiency is a really important part of the conversation, but that's not where it ends. Okay. AI's true power really lies in the enhancement and the empowerment pieces. The enhancement of like, hey, I'm generating new ideas or new materials, things that I could have never considered before if I didn't have AI to help me with that. That's part of the power of AI, is to take learning to a new level. And then the empowering piece is, we'll get there. I think a lot of our districts are still kind of in the space of, we're just allowing teachers to use it for now, but some are starting to dabble in the student side. How can we use AI to empower our learners, right? How does it help them learn to use AI as a learning tool? Okay. All right, and so I see Mark's head shaking. I had to put it in there, Mark. So I want to give you some time. I understand you kind of will break away from here and maybe go into some breakout rooms. But these are the questions I'd love you to think about. How will or do you use AI tools to enhance the work you do? And how will or do you use AI tools to empower your learners? And in your case, those learners might be educators. Right? And I want you to think really hard, just like you see Mark doing here, while he's sitting in front of his, is that my school data? So, okay. I know that was a lot. We have sufficiently fire hosed you. I hope that you can take this material and take some time with it beyond today and really process some of the things that are in there. But appreciate your time. I hope it was valuable for you. And yeah, good luck with everything.
I'm a little nervous because that is not the picture. You've enhanced it with the deep thinking aspect. No, I didn't see it until the last minute when I saw this slide because I was thinking about moving into the reflection rooms, etc. Did anybody have any questions? If you wanted to, I see lots of thank yous coming through, and thank you for that. But were there questions? If people wanted to unmute, I know they answered them on the fly. Maybe one thing real quick, Keith, what is the best way to consider if we are looking at the environmental impacts? What's the best way to like reconcile or think through that? Like how is this helpful to that?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to really limit your environmental impact, and Catherine, I'd love to hear your thoughts too here in a second, but the best way to do it is being intentional upfront about what you're looking for. So that whole prepare model that we had, if you can think through all of that, then you're only submitting one prompt. Yeah, it's a bigger prompt, but you're really only tapping into that environmental effect at once, right? You don't have to continually iterate and iterate and iterate, which adds more impact to the environment.
I've heard too that even though it does impact the environment more, some people have said that they've gotten better responses by doing more than just the one-shot prompt. So it's kind of a hard balance, thinking of what it is that you're looking for. We've had other consultants and in training say to stop being so mannerly with it and stop saying please and thank you because it's adding words. And I thought that was a kind of a funny thing, but it's serious as well. So, not adding extra things that aren't needed. So
I see a question about teachers catching kids using AI and giving zeros in grade books. I hope that we really didn't talk about cheating. It's in here. We didn't do it with you guys today, but you can see some of the data around it. And I think we found that just showing some of this data and engaging people I know you saw this with Mark Lyons when he came to talk with you, thinking about it as a spectrum, like AI, just using AI is not cheating, right? it's how you're using it. And there's varied levels of how much AI you would consider as cheating. So there is a link down here too. I think you asked for some suggestions. How to handle plagiarism. This has been out for a while, but it's from Common Sense Education. Just some different things there, but I don't need to eat up any more of your time with all that. That's something that you can go and click and read if you want to.
All right, perfect. And do you have that vibe coding that Mike Maximchuk put together that you could maybe share in the chat? Is he sharing that openly or no? You don't
I think
know?
he is. Yep.
Okay.
I will go look for it. I'm not sure if I
Yeah.
have it handy right now.
Yeah, that's fine. And if not, send it to me and I'll post it in here. But that's another example of how we as consultants can use that vibe coding part for efficiencies for ourselves. Because I had mentioned in the chat he used that for the other. But all right, well, thank you to the two of you and much appreciated diving into it and getting through it and answering our questions. And if things come up, we know where to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.